Hey, great. Glad to be here. I love the Reactor series. I love being able to talk about mesh. Before the show, Anna was asking me, well, what do I craft in my craft room? And the answer these days is actually mesh events. This turned into my office during the pandemic, and I found VR, I found immersive experiences, and that's been my favorite craft and profession ever since then. So I call myself the Mesh Cruise Director. I'm on the Mesh team as a customer experience PM. And what that means is I work with our customers, both internal at Microsoft and external people there, our early adopters, and all of you to try to help you make really great experiences in Mesh. Now, as we're going through all of this, I'm going to be packing a ton of stuff. This is my brain dump from all the events I have been running uh, in Mesh since December of 2022. I've been running a whole bunch of events. And then even before that, I was running events in Altspace and Engage and Frame. And before that, I was running events in person. I worked with our Microsoft MVPs and brought them to Redmond and created great experience for them there. And then I have a theater background. So this all kind of came together to put me perfectly in this spot to help make great events. And I want to help you make really great events also. So I won't have a huge amount of time to take questions during this presentation, but June 4th at 9 a.m., we're going to have an Ask Me Anything on our Microsoft Tech community. So if you want one-on-one event consultation, come to that AMA. You can submit questions up to 24 hours in advance. And also just there is a board out there where we can start having conversations about making events. So let me know what you're trying to do with Mesh. Let me know, blockers, issues, questions, because we want that feedback and we want to help you go and take this technology to everybody. So, disclaimer, Mesh is a very new product. This is a baby. It was released January 24th. So, there's a lot of room for it to grow and grow to be fantastic. We've had a lot of customer feedback from our wonderful early adopters. Now that it's public, we're hearing great feedback from all of you. And so, there are probably going to be some places in here where you go like, well, wait, right now you can only have people inside your own company attend your own events. Yep, new product. And what you're going to hear me say a lot is, we know you want that. We know you want to be able to invite people outside of your organization to your Mesh events. We know you want it. We know you want to increase room capacity. So I'm going to say a lot of times, yeah, we know you want that. We've heard you. We are hearing you. We are listening. I'm not going to promise that what we're going to deliver, when we're going to deliver. I am not the roadmap person, but we will be getting roadmap out to you and making sure that you know that we are deeply committed to this product and to growing it and improving the technology. So what I want to start with first is this Mesh adoption page that we have available. The adoption center that Carol Wanagatamo and her team have put together, Jesse Huang, is just fantastic. There's a ton of information there about Copilot, about Teams Premium, about everything. So we have our little stake up there, and we just did a refresh of this content yesterday. So I'm going to be talking about some of this content during the presentation. And so some of it I'm just going to bring up live and show you right here. So, what is Mesh? Oh, here are all the different products. It's all of them, Viva, Loop, everything. And so for Mesh, what we added on Monday was this little table here to talk about all the different aspects of getting ready for Mesh. So one of the things I'll point out, Mesh, a new way to connect, that is a deck drawn from our executive briefing center presentation. When we have leaders from other companies visit us, this is a version that we are sharing publicly with you. You can show it to your leaders. You can show it to try to convince people what Mesh is and why they might want to care. We have some other blogs that we've done, things like what we've done at the World Economic Forum. We have a couple things about what we're doing internally with Mesh. And so I'm not going to go over these in depth today, but definitely take a look at them. And I just realized that I am not sharing that screen. So, all right, that's fine. I'll just talk around those. So there's another section here about technical readiness. And the technical readiness is not something I'm going to cover today. I did a presentation back in, I think November, something like that, about uh, when we went to public preview and I talked about how you can set mesh up, that really hasn't changed much. But the key document you still want to look at is preparing your organization for mesh. And in that, there are two really significant areas: mesh ports and mesh licensing. So I created short links so you can get to those really easily. And I'm going to assume that you have mesh set up in your organization and that everything is working. But just in case, if you want to check and see if mesh is set up in your organization and working, um, if you want to know if you have avatars, go to the little uh, dots over here and in the apps and just look and see if you have the avatars app. If not, then your admin should be able to turn it on if you have one of the supported licenses. Okay, so licensing. Um, if you're using any of the Teams-based experiences, so the avatars or the immersive space, you just need a commercial SKU. So E3, E5, we do not support EDU or Gov or frontline worker. We know you want Gov, we know you want EDU. Frontline worker doesn't really make sense for this, but we hear you on the others. So if you have that license, it should just work. If your ports are open, go read the port section or have your admin people read the port section. And then the immersive space, you just start a meeting on your own, schedule it. Don't use Meet now, but schedule it. And then you should be able to go to view and see immersive space, click, and you should be able to walk in there if it's set up, if it's configured in your, or basically if your admin hasn't blocked it, if we have the ports. We are working on getting to a more standard set of ports. If you keep watching that AKMS Mesh Ports doc, we are updating that as we get to the point of being able to use the more standard array of Teams ports. If you want to find out if you have access to Microsoft Mesh in a standalone app, this does require Teams Premium. If you don't have Teams Premium, there is a 6-month free trial of Mesh that you can add on to your existing commercial SKU like you would have for the Teams-based experiences. And so what you want to do there is go to mesh.cloud.microsoft, not .com. We have our own Microsoft top-level domain now. And then from there, you can create an event and then go to the store and just look for Microsoft Mesh, the app, and you should be able to then enter your event. So if you have that, you're good to go. If not, if you have questions, come to the AMA and we can even kind of walk through and maybe, try to help you as much as we can in that format to figure out how to get access to Mesh. So we're assuming now you have access to Mesh, you're good. We have our user enablement section here, which is where I'm going to be focusing most of my time today. So there's a get ready section and an onboard engage section. That is really trying to get people excited about Mesh, give them a bit of information, some blogs, some email templates, and introducing Microsoft Mesh. That's our whole doc set there, but there's a good intro page about it. So delivering impact is a really meaty section for us. And I'm going to start today with a guide that we created about planning an immersive event. So if you come to me and say, hey, Kathy, I want your services as an event consultant, this is a slide out of that planning deck. And this is where I start everything. First of all, why are you holding this meeting? And I do that for every meeting, whether it's in person, in Teams, in the big teams, whatever it is, you have to know what your goals are for the meeting. A lot of times it's pretty simple: transfer knowledge, or get people excited, or get people engaged. So you have to know that, and then it's going to follow: why do you want to have this meeting in Mesh? Not every meeting is best in Mesh. Teams has been around a long time. It has a lot of very rich features. It does great stuff. But if you want to use Mesh, make sure you're going to capitalize on the immersive experience, on the ability to mix and mingle, on the ability for casual conversations to happen. And I will tell you, my favorite and my most frustrating event that I've attended yet in immersive technology was for the SharePoint 20th anniversary. They had every major name in SharePoint, and the SharePoint community is absolutely amazing. They are great people, and they have great leaders and community involvement. So they put on this 20th anniversary in AltSpace VR with all these big headliners. And it was panel and speaker and panel, but they didn't let us talk to each other. So I was literally watching on Twitter and I would see people say, "Hey, I see you over there by the popcorn machine. Hi. Haven't talked to you in ages because COVID." But we couldn't talk to each other. And so there was a huge chunk missing out of that event to really bring the connection. And I think a lot of people walked away from that going, yeah, okay. Because if it's just presentation after presentation, Teams is great for that. So bring in something, make sure you know why Mesh is going to be there, that it's not just a gimmick, because the gimmick only lasts for a couple of minutes and they're like, yeah, okay, what else you got? You have to have really great content in there and capitalize on the Mesh experience. Then you also want to know, what are your success metrics? Really important to know, did I make it? And for me, I usually focus on, did people talk to each other and would they recommend Mesh to somebody else? So sometimes I'll do surveys, sometimes I'll put things actually in the environment to try to help them answer the questions right there. It's also good to think about design principles. I have a background in theater arts design. And when you have these principles, it helps you stay on the right path. So, one of the things I always try for in my events is maximum human engagement. This is all about people connecting to people. Um, we'll talk about room capacity in a minute, but I always try to have as many people in the room as I possibly can. Or if I'm going to have, kind of weird numbers, I may need to load balance across a couple of rooms, but I still try to keep those rooms pretty full. Keep the focus on the interaction, not the technology. Just getting people in there and saying, look, it's immersive, it's virtual. Even if they're in headsets, it's still not enough after the first couple of minutes. So it's the human interaction, it's the human connection. Now, creating a parallel experience. I'm talking about this as a design principle that we used when I was working with our global learning and development group at Microsoft, the people who do our new employee orientation, for example. And they have someone on their team who has something called cyber sickness. It's not VR sickness. Cyber sickness means that she can't actually look at wide screens of things, any kind of broad screen canvas where there's lots of panning. She gets nauseated. And so we knew that Mesh was going to be a bad experience for her. So we said, okay, we need a parallel experience. And we thought about, do we try to make them somewhat equivalent? And we realized that we couldn't really give a good Mesh experience if we were trying to be equivalent by staying in teams. So we just made a completely different experience. And we just offered people a choose your own adventure for what is going to be best for you going in there. So it was a principle that I think really helped us create a fantastic event for everybody. So, some quick and easy ways to try out Mesh. I really recommend this guide because it's going to go into, again, the two things that I think are most important: get people talking, get people walking. So, in the get people talking session, I have some ideas for icebreakers, some suggestions like when you go into the Teams version of Mesh, there's a little purple line. I'll show it to you a little bit later. Um, when you're inside that purple line, we don't have the spatialized audio. Everybody hears each other equally well, which is a good design choice for certain things that you want to do. But if you want to get those one-on-one interactions, you got to get people outside that purple zone. And so I show that in that document and talk about that. The other thing is walking around. And I will tell you, the best icebreaker game that I love in VR is one that I learned at an in-person event for our Microsoft MVP leaders within the company. And they told us, okay, if you like cats, stand on this side of the room. If you like dogs, stand on this side of the room. And I like both, so I stood in the middle. And it was something that really embodied us. And in physical space, it was like, yeah, this is just a nice icebreaker. But in VR, it gets people to understand, oh, I am embodied in here. I can express myself with more than just my voice. I can use my position within the space. And so if you just look for would you rather or this or that, there are a lot of different kinds of game questions of, would you rather have tea or coffee? Would you rather vacation at the beach or the mountains? Pro tip, go to Copilot and say, hey, Copilot, give me a list of work appropriate would you rather questions. So definitely check out that guide if you're trying to say, all right, I want to do something in Mesh. I don't really know what I want to do. Now, use cases for Mesh. These are things that I've actually run here at Microsoft. Socials. Love doing socials. This was actually our Women of Mesh that we did in the Oasis environment. And, it was a holiday end of year thing. So I added some snow covered trees to our desert and some snowflakes. And there's a poster in the back there about what were you proud of in the previous year, and use that as one of the discussion activities. And then we also played that this or that game. And we talked about, would you rather read fiction or nonfiction? And we got into some great book discussions and great book recommendations. Employee resource groups. So we have Women at Microsoft, Blacks at Microsoft, Hola, which is our Latino group, all sorts of great resource groups to come together to help create a stronger bond as a company. So for International Women's Day, we created the Women's History Museum, and we ran this for 12 hours. We got content from the other ERGs. So we said, do Blacks at Microsoft tell us which Black women we should know about in this museum? And they contributed, and Asians at Microsoft and military at Microsoft. They all came through for us. So we had great content that people could wander around amongst. And then other types of cultural events. So this was our Lunar New Year that we did with Asians at Microsoft in February. We happened to have a custom environment that somebody had built as a Tai Chi space with one of our designers. And so we've been planning on just using one of the existing spaces and adding customization later. And she said, well, you could use this space. And we said, okay, great. So it was beautiful. And I bring these out because these are great examples of things that might get people to get over the hump of getting into immersive space. There's a speed bump. There's friction getting in here. People don't understand what it is. So you have to have something that is enticing for them to want to get in there. And socials may do it, especially for your more extroverts who are really missing people. It's a great way to let them wander around and have those casual conversations. But things like the ERGs, things like the cultural, people will say, oh, I want to go to the Lunar New Year event. All right, I have to maybe install something or do something, but it may be worth it for them. The other thing that will get people in is pressure from the top down. So do your all hands, do your internal AMAs. When our vice presidents are having an event in Mesh, we're more likely to show up in Mesh. So this was an all hands that we actually did for the Mesh team. Some of my coworkers put together this great photo booth, and we'll talk a little about customization later and how you can do that transparency so they could look through the porthole there. So these are all great ways to get started. As we extend the capabilities of Mesh, we know there are lots of things you want, then we'll expand to other kinds of use cases. But all of these are solid things I have tried. I can help you run things like this. So when you're starting off in Mesh, remember we have the Teams experience and we have the standalone app experience. And the Teams experience, sorry, just get my screen back here. The Teams experience has the lake house as the default environment. So when you first go into any kind of a Teams meeting, you say view immersive space. Lake house is a beautiful space. It has built-in activities like roasting marshmallows, and there's a beanbag toss, and there's little sound sculpture, and there's an icebreaker thing that you can walk through. It's really cool. If you change the environment from the Teams experience, you go into Oasis, and you actually have a large Oasis and a small Oasis. And it really just kind of depends on, are you getting any of that, that space in the back here? And then there are also different seating layouts. So you can have small tables, a big table, more of an amphitheater, or no seating, just flat space. Then there's also the meadow environment, and that's more set up for a presentation, kind of all hands. There's a little amphitheater space, and then at the back there are two kind of sitting areas. And what's nice is with the spatial audio, the sitting areas are separate enough that I've had groups playing games where you wouldn't want to overhear the other side, and I can put them in the seating areas and they can talk, and then we can all come back to the amphitheater area and talk together. So those are beautiful spaces. We know you want more spaces without having to go through the effort of building your own. We are definitely working on other kinds of great experiences, and we welcome your feedback on what kind of experiences you want. So for most people, this is what you're getting. This is your basic here. If you have access to Unity, Unity is what we're building all of our environments in, and we have a mesh toolkit that you need to install so that you can get things from Unity into mesh. And I'll talk about that later with collections. So we have several different sample environments. If you go to AKAMS Mesh Toolkit, you can go ahead and experiment with those environments. You can also just upload them as is. And I am not a programmer. I can barely spell Unity on a good day, but I was able to walk through the toolkit instructions and get a licensed version of Mesh or of Unity and upload these three environments so that people internally at Microsoft can use them. Toybox has a lot of the same games that Lake House has, so it's fantastic for that. The science building is actually what we used for the Women's History Museum. I just worked with somebody internally who was able to take out all of the physics, like the planets and stuff, so we had room for all of our posters. And that I have the instructions to do that. It's not like huge amounts of Unity skills, but it's a little more Unity work. And then the Dart room just has a lot of physics that you can play with. So that's kind of like the next tier up, but you're probably going to be just using these default environments to start with, and they're great to start with. Now, if you go really far afield, you can build anything. So we had a fantastic holiday event in this world that HoloLux built and let us use, where we had little, sleigh rides and cocoa and building snowmen. This is our thermal energy center that is a digital twin of an actual geothermal plant that is right next to my office building now on the new Microsoft East Campus. And so, these are things that can be built in Unity. If you can imagine it, if you can pay for it, you can do it. And there's some fantastic organizations out there that do this kind of thing that can help you with all of your event. But I would say that's like the really far advanced thing. So we'll talk about a good kind of, crawl, walk, run in a minute. But first, we've talked about Teams. We've talked about standalone Mesh app. And so at some point, you're going to have to sit there and say, well, which one should I use? And in that crawl, walk, run, we definitely say start with the Teams experience because it's the easiest. But if you go into this document, it's actually going to kind of describe a little bit about Teams, describe the immersive, describe the standalone app. And then really a lot of it comes down to what's your goal. Remember, you know what your goals are for your event. So the fastest one is get them into Teams because they're already there. It's 2 clicks. There are activities in Lake House. It's fun. But your max there is going to be 16 people. And we'll talk about capacity in a minute and how I have some tricks for dealing with that. If you need to get more people, you can have up to 200 in the standalone Mesh app. They will be divided into individual rooms of 16, and I'll show you what that looks like. But the great benefit of the Mesh app right now is that's what you can customize. So I can add my branding and I can add screen shares and videos and all sorts of things. We know you want to customize immersive space. We hear you on that. Right now, this is what you got. All right, so 16 people. What does that mean when you're running events? So that's kind of the fourth question I had, is how many people do you have? Because that's going to help me kind of walk through my mental tree of how are we going to design this. So if you only have 16 or fewer, you're golden. You can decide to do immersive space in Teams or the Mesh app. Either one will work for you. And what will happen in the immersive space in Teams is I mentioned there's this purple screen share area that you'll have access to. Let's see if I get my pen to. Okay, so we've got this purple area here, the team screen share area. Um, Anything that happens in that area can also be transcribed, recorded, and captioned. So if you have people who are still in the gallery view, which is the default view of Teams, then you can have kind of a hybrid meeting in this space. But if you want to be doing all of the spatial audio and have those little small groups, get outside the purple zone. Send people out, bring them back in. Now, if you're using the Mesh app, the advantage there, as we said, is you can customize it with images and videos. There are also host tools. We do not currently have host tools in the immersive space in Teams. You want that. So like when you want to reach people who are down by the musical spheres or up in the corner of the library or inside that purple zone, you're going to have to walk around and kind of pull people together for that one. So in some cases, I will decide, yeah, maybe just for that reason that the Mesh app is going to be better for me. But when you start in Teams, it's like it's right there. Everybody knows how to get into it. All right, what do you do if you have more than 16 people? Very common, right? So you can possibly do multiple concurrent events. So just like if I had a conference room that only seated 12 people and I have 24 people, I could get two conference rooms. Now, that means that I have to have facilitators in each conference room. I have to build an experience in each conference room. Or I can present something that's going to go to both conference rooms at the same time. So that's kind of what we have here going with Mesh is I can say, great, I'm going to get everybody together in a regular Teams meeting, which can have, hundreds or potentially thousands of people in the Teams gallery view there. And then I call this old school breakout rooms. Like Teams has breakout rooms, but the immersive view does not work in Teams breakout rooms. It's just not an option for you. And don't try to mix it in with breakouts and going into immersive in that same meeting. It just gets yeah. So just start them in a regular Teams meeting, and then you say, great. If your last name starts with A through C, you're going to room 1. And if your last name starts with D through J, you're going to room 2. And spread people out, or just randomly assign people and tell them what room they're in, and make sure you have a facilitator in each room doing the thing. And then when it's time, everybody can just come back into the regular meeting. So I do this primarily with learning and development scenarios where I need to control who is in each room and have the facilitators there. But that could be in Teams, simple, or it could be in Mesh if we want to do the customization. And we just give people the link to the meeting we want them to join. Now, if you're using the Mesh app with a single room configuration, like we mentioned, you can customize it. So we can have little trees here. We have the host tools, so we can megaphone and or we can mute everybody. So there's some real advantages to that. And I will say this next batch of slides about room configuration, my coworker Sebastian did these. That's why they're much prettier than the rest of the slides. So you notice we've got a couple people here, A to Psi, both a Ellie. When it's just one room, everybody is in the same room. It's pretty simple. But if you need to do more than 16 people and you decide to use a Mesh multi-app experience, this is what happens. First of all, if you are the person who is creating the Mesh event, you are the organizer, and you can assign co-organizers up to 16 people, well, 15 other co-organizers and yourself. And you, when you enter the event, will go into the host room. You will never be in these other rooms down here, room 1, 2, and 3. We know you want some flexibility. We hear you. But for now, all the hosts are in the host room. And then when the attendees come in, they start to fill up. And room 1 will fill up to whatever the max established is. And then when that's full, we'll spill to room 2. And when that's full, we'll spill to room 3 and so on. The default when you create a multi-room event is 16 people max. That's as high as you could ever go. And 200 for event. That's as high as you could ever go. But if you wanted to, you could have a max of 8 per room. And you could have a max of 150 people for the event. You can play with those numbers. Sometimes I will do a max of 2 people per room. And then I do it kind of like speed dating where people are going to join. They're just going to get randomly paired with someone. But we have no control over who is in those rooms, which is why I don't tend to use it right now for learning and development. Where I tend to use this is for all hands events or AMAs, where it's going to be mostly presentation based. And I don't really care what's happening within each individual room. We'll just give them some time to mix and mingle at some point during the event. We know you want greater control over the room, over the distribution, over the host experience. So in the adoption.microsoft.com materials, there is a guide called Greeting People in Mesh Events. And one of the things I go through there's a little bit of kind of complicated calculus of if I want to make sure that I don't have a room 3 where I just have one lonely person or two lonely people. I will sometimes pack events with other of people who are not organizers, but who are my designated kind of greeter people. And when one room fills up, I'll have them kind of hover and then jump out of that event, hope that room fills, and then have them enter the event again and hopefully end up in the smaller room. We know you want better control. We know we need better control over that. But, for now, I'm making it work and it's pretty good. So when you have content that you want to be the same across all the rooms here, because remember, this is the scenario where I'm usually doing a consistent set of content everyone's going to experience. We use something called broadcasting. And so what's going to happen is anybody who is an organizer or co-organizer in that host room can put themselves on broadcast. And as soon as they start broadcasting, they're going to show up across all of the rooms. And everyone will see them. There's some little things there to indicate, hey, they're broadcasting. They have like a little halo and everything. And then they do their talking. At this point, you might also force mute everybody so that only the organizer, only the broadcaster is talking. You can have up to 3 broadcasters at this time. And then when the broadcaster stops, they just disappear. And so, like at the end of your meeting, you could go off broadcast. Everybody can have their own little conversations. But people have questions. So we have a Q&A feature, raise hands. So attendees, no one in the host room sees this, but the attendees see a little hand raised down here. And so if Cy raises his hand, then the organizer is going to see that in the host panel and then be able to say, hey, Cy, I'm going to put you on broadcast. And so there's actually like a little message here that says, hey, you are going to send the megaphone to the attendee. Cy will also get a message that says, do you want to accept the megaphone? Because we're all about, choice and inclusion and consent in here, right? So Cy says, yes, great, I accept the megaphone. And then Cy is broadcasting across all the rooms. Cy asks his question. When Cy is done, either Cy can lower his own hand or the organizer can end Cy's broadcast. Flexibility. So this is great. When we do things like our mesh sprint reviews on our team, we actually have the whole thing in this multi-room experience. And when it's your turn to present, you raise your hand, the person calls on you, you do your presentation, you lower your hand, they go on to the next person. When I do executive meetings now, I actually don't make our executives, I don't make the main presenter organizers or co-organizers. I leave them as attendees so they can be in room 1, 2, or 3 talking with everybody else. And then when they're ready to do their talk, we usually have a Teams back channel going on here. And so I'll say, hey, Carlos, are you ready? Raise your hand. I will put you on broadcast. Carlos does his presentation. When he's done, he can lower his hand, and then we go on to the next thing. So evolving mesh in your org. This is your crawl, walk, run flow of things here. Sometimes we get people who come in and it's like, okay, we're going to buy all these headsets and we're going to make all these custom environments. And I really believe that you're going to be more likely to be successful if you can plant the seeds along the way here. So start by getting people to use their avatars in meetings, because that's the gateway drug. That's going to get people set up so they're already in a Teams meeting, they're using their avatar. Now it's just 2 more clicks to go into immersive space. And boom, now they can start walking around. We have a great lesson that I'll show you in a minute if you want to get people in there for kind of a team bonding, team building experience. Then try doing a single room event. Keep it simple. Just grab a couple of your friends in there. Say, hey, let's go play around. Let's see what these different tools are. And then after you've tried the single room, try a multi-room event. Now, this is where it helps to be able to limit the room capacity. So you don't want to have to get 40 people together. Just say each room has a limit of 3 people. And then, you just have to get 6 or 7 people, or even 2 people. And then you can experiment with the multi-room event controls and then try running an actual multi-room event. And then somewhere along the way, if you're using the Mesh app, you probably are going to want to customize things. What I find is that, and I'll show you some customizations, it's a speed bump. It's not a learning curve. Once you show people a couple of basics, you can actually just go crazy with this. Our team admin, who is new to the team, ended up doing our Mesh ship party in Mesh, and she did a fantastic job. And she said, oh yeah, I play those decorating games. So this is just like that. It is so creative. People get so enthusiastic and excited. I love seeing when they start to do their customizations and they come up with beautiful things. So headsets. Headsets are complicated right now. There are usually policies in most enterprise environments that are going to control what kind of devices you can bring on the network and what those devices have to be configured like. It's called conditional access, and it's part of our overall Microsoft defense in depth, zero trust strategy. So we don't trust this device that shows up and says, yeah, I want to be on the network. And it may not be able to get on your network at all. So if you have headsets, if you want to try them, get one, see if you can get it on the network. If you can't, talk to your network people. have your network people talk to us, open a support case. You know, we know you want to be able to get them on more easily. We are working between us, between Meta, between lots of different things to try to make these a more common enterprise device. But it's kind of like when, you know, when cell phones first came out and they're like, wait, you want to do what with this thing? This is your device. And even company issued devices. So as an event organizer, I actually like that. I like not having headsets to deal with because it's one set of instructions for everybody. It's one set of troubleshooting that I have to do. So if you want to, you know, try the other things first, ramp up to that and get to the point where you say, okay, we know how to get our headsets on. And then if you want to start doing like the totally custom environment, you know, like our technology center, our thermal energy center, or the holiday event, those are great, but this take a lot of time and investment, resources, money, people, you know, even you know, creating the POs and talking to vendors who may be designing things for you. And you don't have to start there. Start small. Start with avatars. Start with teams. Then try some of the single room, multi-room events just with the default environments that we give you and try customizing them. It's going to set you up for a longer term success. So we have some other information here about how to use all of the stuff, how to join an event, how to create an event. So I'm not even going over like, you know, what's the basics creating an event? Well, you go to the portal, there's a one pager. It's pretty simple. The Mesh in Teams facilitator guide and presentation slides. That is a little team building exercise that you can do in Mesh in Teams. You can customize that. You know, we've given you lots of verbiage in there, but you can pare it down. You can change it for your org. But it's a good way to just kind of get started in the Mesh in Teams experience. So then, customizing events. All right, new section here. This is all documented in our help, but I'm going to give you a couple of things that I have found are best practices and a couple of things that have saved me so much time when working with things in here. So let's assume for a minute that you're just going to do a simple custom event. And what that's going to look like is you're going to create your event in the future because you cannot customize an event once it has started. We know you want that. So creating an event in the future, I will make it at least an hour out, sometimes a day out, a week out, just, you know, in the future. So you have time to customize it. You go into a special customization session and then save. If you do not save your stuff, you'll still be able to keep going into that same customization session and the stuff will be in the customization session. But as soon as that event actually starts or somebody joins the event is what's going to start it. If you have not saved it, you will lose everything. I've seen people do this. It is not pretty. Please do not be one of them. Save. So 10 minutes before the event starts, the room opens. Regular attendees who are not organizers or co-organizers can join. Prior to that 10 minutes, only organizers and co-organizers can go into the customization session. They can't actually join the event either. So once you join, that event is locked for customization. You cannot change a thing at that point. So allow yourself plenty of time. And then at that point, your event is just running. And so that's great if you're just doing a little one-off kind of thing. Later on, I'm going to show you a more complicated event flow using templates. And that's how you're going to get traction to do a lot of events and do them very quickly. So let's talk about the customization part here. I'm not going to do live demos because I eat too much time going back and forth and things. So I've got a couple of videos and you know, lots of screenshots here. So the customization at this point is adding objects. The three things you can add at this time: videos, images, screen shares. We know you want more. We know you want 3D objects. We know you want text. We know you want these things called web slates that you can bring in that can render web pages. We hear you. But right now, this is what you get. Now, your screen share is really going to be just like screen sharing into a PowerPoint, you know, like you're sharing in a Teams meeting, whatever. You can share a web page, anything that you want to share on a screen. You can share a window or the whole screen, just like in Teams. You can have multiple screen share objects, but they will all show the same source. So it's like the Jumbotron at the concert where you're seeing the same thing on both sides of the stage there. And we know you want multiple sources, but right now it's just the one source here. Screen shares do not share audio. We know you want that. I know I want that. So what you do then instead is you can put in a video that has your sound. Videos do include sound, but screen shares do not at this time. Your videos and your images must be in SharePoint or OneDrive for Business. This is all work-related stuff, including your MP4s. You can't stream from YouTube or Vimeo. It has to be an MP4 that you have in SharePoint or OneDrive. And then, as you'll see in the picture over here towards the bottom of the screen, we have the customization button over on the left there. And that is what you're going to do to bring up the editor. Then you have the save button. And at the bottom, you also notice it says you're in edit mode. So that's how you know you're in this customization session. So that's what it's going to look like when you go to add something. Let's say I click screen share and I get this, and it's like, my gosh, what the heck is this? Well, it's all a matter of perspective, because this is like right in front of your face. And so to see what that's really going to look like, you have to back up. So if you press your down arrow key or your S key, that moves your avatar back in the space. Okay, now I can see, here's my screen share. And it's like, okay, great. My screen share's up against the wall, right? No, it's a matter of perspective. So if I jump over to the side, you can see now my screen share is kind of like several feet from the wall, but perspective is confusing. So if I jump back over in front, I'm going to click and hold my Alt key. The Alt key is the key. I can just, the Alt key is going to move things forward and back. And when it's moving, actually, I'm going to go back and play that one more time if I can. I got into. Okay, so as it's moving, look at the bottom, look at the floor. There's a little white dot and a white line. That's going to tell you where you are in relation to the surface you're trying to set something up near. So as I'm holding the Alt key, I'm moving my mouse forward and back from me, and then I'm going to see that little dot get close to the wall, and then I can go, okay, I think it's at the wall now. Now I can look at the side. Bingo. Now I'm lined up. That is a good distance from the wall. But then you also notice it's a little bit small. You know, when you're right next to it, it looks really big, but perspective. So what you can do then here, there we go. You can click and drag the corners, or you can hold the Shift key and drag, and that will shrink and grow your screen. Now, if you move your A or your D keys, that will move your avatar left and right. And then, as we mentioned, you can press S or the down arrow key to go forward and back. This is a 3D object. You can rotate it among all three axes. Sometimes I will do this and I will end up with my object in like a really weird space. Easiest thing at that point, I just delete it over there on the editor. There's a little trash can, delete it, start over again. That's usually the easiest, especially if I start rotating like clockwise or counterclockwise. It can get really messed up there. All right, so another thing that you can add is an image. So an image must be a PNG or JPEG file on a SharePoint or OneDrive. Put them all in the same place. It's easier to find them. And you need to get the URL. So, you know, like this was a demo I did for our Fix Hack Learn. I had all my images in one place. Copy link. You can share, but then you click share, and then from the share, you have to click copy link. Just click copy link, it's faster. And you notice the default is that people in, you know, whatever organization you're in with the link can edit. So all of my coworkers could theoretically edit this. Well, they're not going to be able to edit in Mesh. If I cared, I could go back and say view, but it's more clicks. I just say copy the link, one click, I'm done. And then I come back over here and I paste it into the URL. And then rename your images. When you have 70 images like we had for the Women's History Museum, you better have a naming scheme. Sometimes I will make the first part wherever it is in the room it is located. Sometimes I will indicate what type of object it is, depending on how I think I might go back and need to edit these later, but rename them. Otherwise, it's a mess. Now, another thing that you can do with images, this is an image. And you notice it has kind of like this blue stuff around it. That is the back plate. And I can turn that back plate off so I can have these freestanding images. So images with transparencies like logos, if you want to put your logo on the wall or on the floor. I showed you the little submarine at our all hands where people could peek through the porthole because that submarine had a transparent place where the porthole was. And so people could stand behind it and be seen and do a great photo booth. So definitely play around with showing or hiding the back plate here. Another thing you can do is rotate your objects. So if I have a long bit of text that I need to display, sometimes I will just put it into a PowerPoint slide at the regular 16:9 aspect, but then I can just rotate it so that it, will read in a portrait orientation. Which brings me to, actually, I should talk for just a second about signage. Good signage is good for organizations. Good signage is good for events. You need signage so that people get in here and they know what to do and where to go, or you need people. But usually I rely on both people and signage to kind of help orient people, make sure they get to the right place. Just like if you were to go to Build in person in Seattle, you will see the purple shirts directing you around. You will see tons of signage there. Same thing for a lot of the things that hold true in physical events are going to happen in virtual events too. All right. We're getting down here. So we have our videos that you can place. They can be visible or invisible. Because we can't screen share with audio, if we wanted to share something, like video with content, a lot of times what we'll do is make it invisible, make the video invisible, but put it right in front of the screen share. And then when we're ready to show the video, then we make it visible, we play the video, and then we turn it off. Notice also that you can change the volume. For this, everybody in the space will hear the same thing at the same volume. There is no spatialization of the audio from the video. That's like over the loudspeakers. And you can have it loop if you want to. So these are some of my best practices. You may want to screenshot this one here. Put everything in one place, SharePoint or OneDrive. Paint 3D if you want to do transparent backgrounds. You can go in there and turn the transparent canvas on. And they have a lot of 3D objects. Now, you can't bring a 3D object into Mesh at this time and have it be 3D. So if you bring in a cake, it's going to be like a flat picture of a cake, like a cardboard cutout of a dinosaur. So if you look at it from the side, it will be flat. But, they can still be fun. I still use them for decorations. Copy linked. You don't need to use share. Just stay the default permissions. Paste using Control-V. Rename everything. Group them by names because they're going to be sorted alphabetically. There is also a search feature. So you can type in the first few characters, and so that'll also help group things when you need to work on them. And remember, you're holding that Alt key and dragging. That's going to get the little white dot and show you where you are in relation to the wall. And then you can resize using either the handles on the object or hold down the Shift key. But don't resize it till after you've placed it because you don't know how big it is until you know exactly where in the space you want it. It'll look bigger when you are closer to it. Look at it from other angles, use your A key, your D key to move back and forth, jump around here. If you're stacking things, sometimes they can get kind of caught in each other's, nimbus of movement here. So sometimes I'll get things stacked so closely that I can't select the one that I want. In that case, I usually just delete one of the objects and then recreate it and give a little bit more space. And then we mentioned you can have videos hidden and then add the sound later. All right. Big brain dump here, 10 minutes, last section, environments versus templates. So if you want to build something in Unity, if you have that skill set, whatever you're doing there in Unity comes by installing the Mesh toolkit into a Unity project. And then in that project, you say upload to Mesh. And that will go into something called a collection that we'll show you in a minute here. And there is no, all the customization happened in Unity. It's all baked in, I like to say. But then after you get it into a Mesh collection, then we can add those customizations I just showed you, the videos, the images, the screen shares. And if I'm going to keep doing that same meeting, like I always want my screen share at the front, if I always want my poster about, what did you do? I want my stars in there. I can add those to a template. So somebody asked me in one of our office hours for our technology adoption program, like, how fast can you, set up a room with branding? And it's like, well, if I have a template, less than 2 minutes, because it's all just built in there. But I'm fast enough with customization. I could do what I was showing you in those demos there in 5 minutes. You get pretty fast at it. So when you go to create a Mesh event, it's going to say, do you want to use an environment or do you want to use a template? And at first, you're not going to have any templates, so you can pick that. It'll be empty, but you'll always have an environment that you can start with. And so your workflow, if you're going to do something with templates, you don't create the event first. You start with your template. You create a collection in the Mesh portal, and I'm going to come back later and circle back to what a collection is and why you care. Then within that collection, you have whatever environment you have available, which will always at least be Meadow and Oasis, the default ones. And then you customize that. Actually, you create the template from that environment, and then you go in and you customize that, adding objects like I just showed you. And then what do? You save, 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 because if you don't save it, when you go to make the event, if it's not saved there, it won't be part of your event. And then you have to publish the template. I'll show you what that looks like. And then at that point, you can create your event. Now, once you create an event, you cannot change the environment or template that you used. So I actually tend to wait until just before the event. I usually tell people I will give you a placeholder, and then 1 hour before the actual event, I will send you the event, because that lets me have maximum amount of time to work with my templates and my environments and whatever it is I need to do, and then have things show up there. But you definitely want to experiment with this, run some sample stuff before you try running it on anything big, crawl, walk, run, right? Okay, so we'll come back to talking about collections in a minute. But when you go into the Mesh app, this is usually where I'm starting my templating from. You can do some stuff in the web portal, but I find it's a cleaner workflow for me mentally. Starting here, there's this little icon up there, like a little pen. That is your manage templates environment. So you notice I have a collection, Kathy's Private World, and I can create a template within this little collection that I've put together. So if I click create template, the next thing I get to do is name my template, and good names, good descriptions, add versioning, add comments in here. I'll show you some examples of what I've done that was really helpful. I cannot change the collection. So whatever collection I started with, this is what I get. Then you do the environment. Now, if I have uploaded other environments, I will be able to click from Kathy's Private World and see all of those environments that I've uploaded, maybe the ones from the Mesh Toolkit I've uploaded. But if you've not uploaded anything yet, all you get is Oasis and Meadow. Everything else will be empty there. But you can always start from these, and these are great places to start. So I select that, I say save the draft, and then at this point I have my reactor demo. You notice it's down in the draft section down below. And you can collapse publish so you can get down to your drafts. So at this point, it's just like the Oasis environment. There's no difference. But now I'm going to add my customizations. I click the little door that takes you into the customization session and says, okay, customize template, not join meeting, and not join event, right? So I do all my customizations. When I exit, I can come back here to the manage templates, and then I click the 3 dots next to my reactor demo and I say publish. And at that point, it's going to end up in my published session. So we're good there. I can create an event from this. If I revert to draft, I can edit it. But if I don't revert, I can't change it unless it's back in draft format. So when you first go into the Mesh portal, you have collections up here, but it says you're not a member of any collections. So you would create a collection to start making your templates. If you want to upload custom environments, you also have to have a collection for that environment to end up in. But at this point, we don't have anything. So let's talk about collections for a minute here. A collection is actually an M365 group, which means it is also subject to all of your M365 governance. Like at Microsoft, we have to have 2 FTE owners of every M365 group. Well, Mesh is not going to tell you that. So you got to kind of know what's going on. You may have people who are restricted from creating M365 groups. They will not be able to create collections. So you're going to have to figure that out, including who is going to be the owners, which are the owners of the M365 group. And as far as Mesh goes, they can manage the collection membership, and they can change a couple of settings about the collection. You do not have to be a member of the collection to attend an event with a template or an environment from that collection. That's fine. You can just attend any event as long as you have the right licensing and you have the invite on your calendar. But it is collection members who can create templates, customize templates, use templates to create their event, and upload environments if you're going to do the Unity thing. So when I did the Women's History Museum, I created that in our Microsoft, our team self-host. It's a big mess. And I can't go and just add anybody else in the company to say, hey, you want to create your own? So when we uploaded our thermal reactor, we put it in a different collection, and then we can decide who we're going to give rights to be able to create their events using the Thermal Energy Center template there. You really got to kind of think through that strategy of who's going to need to create the events, and you cannot move the environments or templates from one collection to another. That would be really nice. I haven't really heard people talk about that because I don't think many people are doing this yet. I've been doing it. I know what I would like to see. Also, you cannot rename these collections here. So I created one called All Microsoft, and then I realized, oh, that was really stupid because people are going to be added to a collection called All Microsoft. They're going to get an email from the M365 groups that say, hey, you've been added to All Microsoft. And I'm going to go, what? I don't know what that is. So like Mesh Microsoft would have been better, something like that. We'll learn. We'll get better about them. So here is a collection that we did for our Microsoft Customer and Partner Solutions group. I knew to make them a separate collection, thought it through. And so you can see they just have Meadow and Oasis as the only environments they have. And you can see they have one template each that they've made from those for their specific events that they're running. And if we uploaded something from Unity, then they would have additional environments that they could create templates from. Now, here is our internal Mesh self-host. It's a mess. 56 templates of Meadow. Because anybody who's a member of this, and half the people on the Mesh team are members, 25 templates for Oasis. Here's the Women's History Museum. Now you notice that I have a V1, a V2, a V3. I saved those. I could get rid of V1 and V2 by now. I should probably go clean those up. But on the day I was doing it, as I realized, oh, there was an error on the Juliet Lowe slide, I could go and fix it, upload it, and then I gave them version numbers. It really helped me. And then anytime I want to go and create this, I can do this on demand for anybody at Microsoft. So think about your strategy here. Make sure you save to your template, because if you don't save, those changes are gone. When you edit a template, it does not affect any events that have already been created from that template. It's only going to affect new events made from that template. So you also have to kind of like build your mental model. And the best way to do that is just practice it a few times, set up some events, think of some fun things to do with your coworkers, do a trivia contest, do a social. I like to publish and test my events periodically just to make sure everything is saving properly. I use the version numbers, and I keep a backup there, so as I'm moving on, I make sure I've got a copy of it, just kind of the wayside. All right, so I got 1 minute to review here. So adoption materials, go to AKA MS Mesh adoption page. Those are the 3 documents that I would say, if you're going to look at anything, look at those 3. See if you have access to the Mesh app in your current environment. If not, go and talk to your administrator about how to do it. Try some simple team building, try some socials, try some cultural events here. Get somebody in your org who has 200 or fewer people to do an all hands event. Think about, are you going to use Teams? Are you going to use Mesh? How big? What customization do you need? And then just a replay of this slide here. Crawl, walk, run. You don't have to start with a full event, customized with headsets. Start with avatars, start with teams. It's a great way to ease people into it. And then when you're ready to start doing more customized things, environments, straight out of Unity, no customization. Now, you can do a lot of customization in Unity. I'm not a coder. I can't do it in Unity. I do it afterwards. Like that Women's History Museum, we had 70 objects all added after it came out of Unity. So that's my time. I can stick around and answer questions in the chat for a few minutes. But really what we've set up for is that June 4th, 9 a.m., June 3rd, 9 a.m., it will open for questions. You'll be able to pepper your stuff up there. But also, I should have thrown an AKA on here. I can grab the link for it. On the Mesh adoption page, if you scroll down to the bottom of the Mesh adoption page, there is a link for where you can ask questions about events. It's just a virtual events and seminars forum, and that's where we're going to take your Mesh questions. I check that every day, every weekday, just seeing what you got there. So thank you. You can go to mesh.com. It has a lot more information about this. Go to the Mesh adoption page.